Is is it difficult? Is it difficult when you make a game that is literally based around scaring the people to maintain a sense of storytelling? Like how do you balance telling a story whilst also trying to scare people? Because of course their whole emphasis and concentration is going to be on surviving the experience, not taking in the storytelling. Is how do you balance that?
Uh, First of all, I love scaring people. That's mostly why I watch Let's Plays, because it's the anticipation of knowing they're gonna shit their pants at a certain moment. Like, yeah, I'm gonna watch you get scared. This is gonna be fun.
Yeah.
But with the storytelling, most of it is very. I took the same approach from the mod, where all the storytelling, excluding a few cutscenes, is done at the player's pace, right? So you're kind of piecing. I'm not really telling you what the story is while you play the game. You kind of get thrown all these jigsaw pieces, and you have to piece it together yourself. So you can play through the whole game ignoring all of this, not knowing what the hell is going on, and there is a natural conclusion to the end of the game, but if you want to figure out why you've reached this conclusion, you kind of have to collect all of the pieces and put them together. And like Pyrocynical, like he did a 2-hour video on the mod a few years back, and he has this really great section at the end where he just gets every single letter that you find in the game, and he goes through explaining this happens at this point in the character story, this is at this point, and like he just I left it very cryptic intentionally, but every single thing that I put in there, he found it, he put it together, and like he understood it. And after that, I was like, I had to, I definitely have to keep this in the mod as well. Like, I don't want to explicitly tell the player why they're here and what is happening. They kind of have to put that together themselves. And that feeds into the whole good ending as well, because you can kind of take these clues and interpret them in the way that, it's skewed by this voice on the radio that's telling you, kind of talking to you through your experience, but you can kind of play it a different way, and you can do different things, and it changes the way the story is and how you may interpret the story, and by the end of it you get a good ending. Or so very much so, like, the whole way the story is told is very much at the, in terms of the pacing, it's very much at the player's speed. They can stop and read a letter and then move on, or they can just ignore it and just keep going through and just experiencing just the horror and, not so much the story.
That actually brings up an interesting question. I know as long as we've had audio logs and letters lying around and that kind of stuff in survival horror, that has become sort of like a thing people are more vocal about in terms of being like, this seems like a crutch. Like, this is a lazy way to do it. Do you have any opinion on that? Or is it just sort of like you've got to use exactly whatever feels right to you?
Yeah, I could totally get that. Going forward, if I do another horror game, I'm probably not going to do that. that whole letter and log thing. It's kind of a holdover. But unfortunately, in terms of when it came to remaking the mod, there wasn't really much room to add in any other ways to tell the story. I could totally understand that, but it all comes down to the story itself. Like Bioshock, it works because in Bioshock, everyone's gone, no one's there anymore. How do you? The audio logs make total sense there. Yeah, I guess it depends on what kind of story you're trying to tell and how you're trying to tell it. But I can totally see why people might think that it is a bit of a crutch, because it actually is. It's just super easy. It's like, oh, I got this bit of story. Let's just put it on a piece of paper and throw it in the game, and there you go. There's the story.
I've been kind of shocked to see people complaining about that, because it's been like the standard since at least System Shock, right? Like 1994, if not before then. Because I think even the guy who created that said he kind of got it from somewhere else. I've always kind of liked that literary aspect to games, where it's not just like everything's being told to me in audio-visual form. Like, I have to actually read it and interpret it, and I'm the one who's having to play a role in the story. Like, how would I read that? Because it gives you much more of like a play in the imagination between the developer and you, where they're asking you to have a reaction that's not just sensory. So
Yeah.
I've always appreciated that being a part of it, especially in these types of games where you want to kind of mess with the player's head and start making them doubt their own perceptions, or should I be scared here? Is this going to be bad? Do I need to pay attention to that? Or is it just performative, right? Are they just Are they just saying horror things and cliches, or is this really going to matter in 5 minutes or something like that? So I think it's a fun gamble to play with the audience.
Yeah. I will admit, a lot of the time I see those logs, like playing the Resident Evil 2 remake. Like, oh, here's a letter. I'll just tab through it until I find a bit in bold, and that's the thing I need to know. Okay, move on.
Highlight in green or whatever they do now.
Yeah.
Speaking of Bioshock, were there any kind of surprising places of inspiration for Total Chaos that might not be quite obvious upon first glance?
That's a good question. Because I know there are things.
I didn't come up with it. Medium did.
Yeah, I know there are things in there. I'm trying to think what they are. I guess the big one is it's. You kind of look at a game, I kind of see it as a Souls-like, because a lot of the inspirations for the combat and the level design and how combat, how weapons work and how the enemies react, a lot of that was very much inspired by Dark Souls. Almost to the point where you could easily turn it into a Dark Souls game if you minus the whole using a campsite and all the enemies respawn. I actually think about it. Say, I'd love to do a mode in this where you literally every save point you access, if you save your game, it respawns all the monsters, because it totally could work. I was surprised by that as well. I was surprised by that because I never played a Dark Souls game in my life. I always just exclusively played first-person shooters, and then first time I ever kind of branched out from that genre, I played Dark Souls and I just loved it. And this was around the time when the mob was in very early days, and there was just so much I wanted to grab from that game, and just wanted to try and replicate it in mods. I wasn't really expecting that.
Yeah, I always found games like Dark Souls or a lot of third-person games a little too difficult, because Deadforge has completely the opposite point of view, but I do agree with him, and it feels like you're controlling a person while you're doing it, and that's the exact reason why I prefer first person, because I feel like I'm in the game rather than playing the game. It's a bit more immersive. But growing up and playing games that were like Devil May Cry and the old hack and slash, which kind of the Souls-like took over, I found them so difficult, but yet they're just so satisfying to play as well. I think for a lot of people, even though we are primarily a boomer shooter focused platform, everyone has like a secondary preference, right? Everyone has like another genre, a type of game that they like that's not a first person sort of thing. But breaking on from that, VR. So you said we're having a version that is being released in VR. You said you tried it; it was shit. So how did that become? How did that come about, basically, and how did you?
When I said look like shit, I mean visually when I put the mod into Unity, it looked like shit, which kind of prompted me to put a bit more work into the visuals and try and make it a bit more high res. VR is originally we're going to ship with VR with the base game, but it became very clear to me very fast that while the core game mechanics kind of translate well to VR, having slow movement and melee-based combat, you still have to. I kind of wanted to craft it to be more of a catered experience to VR. So stuff like having a backpack full of 50 different things was not going to work in VR, and it's I wanted to have it where you pull a backpack out and you have a physical backpack in front of you, right? Basically, I wanted to make something that was more catered to a VR experience, like having a backpack physically in front of you. I really wanted to have that where you can actually just open it up and have the items there rather than just a window that says these are items. So you have things like taking the inventory and cutting it down to a smaller size.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, now the inventory is a smaller size, now you have to have less items in the game. So, all the items have to be rebalanced. There was a lot of work that had to be done just to make it work well in VR. Which is, why we're kind of not shipping with VR, because, I want to put a bit more work into it.
Yeah. It's the perfect genre, though, isn't it, for VR? Something like that. I can't imagine some of your other games being in VR. That would perhaps be a little overbearing for the senses, let's say.
Oh yeah.
But
Turbo
definitely,
won't work at all.
yeah, yeah. But definitely, a slow-paced horror game. I think it'd be immersive as hell. In an environment. I spend a lot of time in the woods because I do archery. So just the feeling of isolation of being by yourself in a place where you don't know if something is around the corner, I can absolutely get on board with something like Total Chaos in VR and the sense of isolation that it comes with.